Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Molly Mecca, and I am a board member for Mojave Educational Foundation Board of Directors, which is Mojave Springs School, and we are the support for the school. And we are just so excited about sharing with all of you about Waldorf education and where this school is headed, and the intention behind what is happening here. It's important for this city and for this community and for our families that are already here. And it's important for us to have a little bit more of an understanding on what it really looks like as they go through the grades process. One of the things that I love about the Waldorf world is how incredibly helpful and quick to support each other they are. We originally had Bonnie Rivers coming to speak with us, and unfortunately she had a health condition that had to be dealt with, and we didn't find out until just towards the end of last week. And we were so grateful that Thesa was so willing to help us. But that is my experience with all of Waldorf, that all you have to do is reach out and there's somebody there that says, what do you need? We would love to help you get there. And so it's been a really beautiful experience for us to learn how connected this community is. Let me tell you a little bit about our wonderful speaker who has so much experience to bring to us to talk to us about this curriculum today. Thesa Callinicos is Callinicos. Thank you. See, I was practicing and I knew I would do that. She grew up in South Africa in Johannesburg and went to regular teacher training for mainstream schooling there, and became a kindergarten assistant. And in that process realized that that wasn't the kind of teacher that she wanted to be, and found Emerson College in England and went there and was able to explore the world of teaching in a different way, in a more intentional way, and start to really wrap her arms around the process of it more than just the outcome of what you're trying to get from the student. And she has gone through 4 loops with 4 different classes. So she's done 2 1st through 6th grade loops with 2 different classes, and then she has done 2 loops of 1st through 8th grade. So vast teaching experience to bring to us, to talk to us about all of the ways of the inner workings of this. And we're just so grateful that you could share your knowledge with us, and this evening be able to give us a little bit more insight into how we can really revere our children and let them have the childhood that they deserve.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds really selfless, but I really have never been to Las Vegas. So, and I've been here the whole day and walking around the school, and it's so lovely. And the teachers are so just dedicated and so on board, and the children can feel the unity. Children feel a lot more than we realize, they on another plane, another level. So I did make a few notes here. So I wanted to introduce to you a little bit how the Steiner schools came, the Waldorf schools. There was a man who had the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory of all things. And best cigarettes, with Turkish tobacco. And he was one of the first, he was a philanthropist, and he was one of the first people who realized that if he gave his workers a share in the factory, that they would feel ownership and work better. So he was one of the first people that had that idea. And then he realized that the workers needed an education. And he knew Dr. Steiner, who was a philosopher, scientist, philosopher. And he invited Steiner to talk to the working people. And they were so amazed by what he was saying And usually, we still have the book of the workman's lectures, and he was really straight with them because there was no intellectual, you know, pretentiousness going on. And so he had this beautiful, he has this lovely course of lectures for the workmen. And they said, look, it's too late for us. We need this for our children. And so Emil Malt was financed the school for the children of the working people. So that's how it started. And Steiner said that really every school should be financed by corporation or someone or some kind of business, you know, that is a philanthropy, a gesture of philanthropy, but it's a different culture in America as well. In Germany today, it's 100 years old. The Waldorf schools, they've proved themselves over and over. So I wanted to just give you that background. And you know, every Waldorf school, we were talking with Marley today, is independent. They govern themselves. They have their own financial you know, system and so on, but and they're all over the world. They're in all different cultures, and people like there's one in South Dakota, I think it's the Lakota Waldorf School, and it's a full Waldorf school with, they've embraced their own culture in it. So they have Native American Lakota language. They speak Lakota, which was a lost language, you know, we just recently almost lost. So, but when you walk in, whether it's China or whether it's the Lakota school or if it's the Paonia school, you know it's a Waldorf school immediately. So there's colors, there's natural things, and there's just you know, it's about 10 degrees softer than most schools. One of the things that I think is so wonderful about it is that it's really child-centered. A lot of schools, you know, you find the children sit at desks and they shuffle papers, basically like an office. And it came from the Victorian times when the Victorians thought that children weren't really, they were just little adults, and you could talk to them in abstract ways. And I had that experience when I took my class skiing, and this guy was trying to show me what a wonderful teacher he is for children, but he was talking to me and I was the teacher, I was an adult. And he said, imagine you've got peanut butter on this foot and bananas on this foot, and a gorilla is chasing you, and you just got to say peanut butter, bananas. And I was like, wait a minute, this is how it must be for children when someone's talking abstractly for them and they have to interpret it into pictures so they can understand it. He was giving me a picture, and I'm an adult, I can think abstractly, and I had to interpret it the other way around. You know? So the Waldorf schools really respect that the children are on a different journey, and that there's a growing up physically, but there's also a growing down. So when a baby is born, the baby is here, but the consciousness is right like that. You know, the physical body of the baby is here. But the awareness is so wide. And then as the baby wakes up and grows up every day, this gets smaller and smaller, and until, you know, they come more into themselves. So there's a growing down, and then there's a growing up. Wow. Those things are happening to your children right now. And so in the fact that they're growing down is not recognized mostly by people. They're thinking that it's just a body and a brain thing. And then there's social things and so on. But in this time when the consciousness is growing down, inner capacities are being built and inner faculties. And we need to meet those as adults, as parents, and as teachers. And we have a circle around the children. The teachers have a circle, the child is in the middle, and the parents on the other side. The teachers have lots of circles around the children. So those are, one of the taglines at our school is Waldorf education, education from the inside out. Because that is what we're doing. And that's why we don't have media and things taking away attention in an outer way and a distraction. And especially moms and dads, don't turn the TV or the games on or anything in the morning, because if they're so flooded with stimulation, they will not be able to take in anything at school. So these are some of the principles. One of the things is that the teacher, first of all, we understand that doing first leads to feeling, leads to understanding. So you do first, then you feel, you experience it, and then you understand it. And so there's a lot of movement in the Waldorf schools because we do things, even, just those circles or these books, they make their own books. It's a doing experience, and then they read what they wrote. So, and I'll tell you why more in a little while. And then we're targeting the will forces, the doing ability. We're targeting the feeling forces through the arts. And it's not how do you feel and how do you feel, it's music, color, dance, play modeling, all of those things create a sensitivity and a humanity in you. Art is a huge teacher. It informs the critical thinking, and it's not verbal. It's non-verbal. You don't need to be able to speak to communicate artistically, and it's geometric. There's so many levels of it, and that's why we infuse everything that we do with art. In fact, we say that teaching isn't really a science in the elementary grades, it's an art. Not that we don't do science, and that's another myth, is that people think that Waldorf schools are so soft. I remember someone saying, all you do is sing and dance over here. But, and then, so it's the thinking, the feeling, and the doing that is being educated. And also we begin with little children by showing them the whole. Because if you have a frog, the frog is more than just 4 legs, a liver, and a spleen, and a long trunk. The frog has a quality of frogness. And if you cut it up, you don't have the frogness. And most educations, they should give you all the pieces, and you have to put them together before you even know what the whole is. So we teach from the whole to the parts, even in math. What is 4? 4 is 2 and 2. And what else is it? It's also 3 and 1. And it's also 4 and nothing more. So there's this flexibility in this number that it's not just 2 and 2 is 4, but 4 is 3 other 3 things. So that gives you an ability to be flexible and to adjust and to solve problems. So it's important that when you give them the whole, and as they grow up, that they do analyze it, and they do cut it up, and then they put it back together. So those things are important. So these are just basic principles that all the teachers are trained in. And then there's this gestation period where, and I was talking with Molly and Leslie almost got my whole lecture out of me today. They said, I think it was I can't remember if it was Goethe or Piaget, but they said the worst thing that teachers do today is that they demand back what they just offered, what they just put in, you know, and then they want you to repeat it. And what does the lesson and what did it say? And then it just cancels out everything. And so in the Waldorf school, we believe in knowledge having a gestation period. And so do they in Norway, which has one of the best educations in the country. They have, after every lesson, they have 45-minute break. So that they're not running from one thing to the other thing, and now you have to learn this, now this, now this, but they actually they have a time to breathe in, out, and it's like a refreshment, you know, where you can, and so in the Waldorf school, they believe in the lesson, and then forgetting, and then remembering, recalling. Recall is big in Waldorf schools. So you would do, say, a lesson for 3 weeks or 4 weeks on the same subject, and then you would drop it and go, and you'll be doing history, and then maybe you'll be doing math. And we try to do different subjects like that, sort of in and out breathing. And then 2 blocks down the road, we'll do history again, and we'll remember what we last spoke about. We actually recall every morning the lesson of the day before. So there's a nightly gestation, and then there's a monthly, you know, recalling. So, and then what happens is that it leaves the mind and it goes into the body, and it becomes an intuitive thing. And then when it's recalled, it doesn't just come back from here, but it comes back from, you know, the whole body. So it's a real knowledge. It's not the test knowledge where you, after you put the answer down, you throw the paper away, you know, and you passed. Yeah. So, and then how do we decide what to teach? That is a question that the Waldorf teachers ask. How do you decide what to teach and when to teach and when's appropriate? And so Steiner gave us this amazing map. And you know, when I started teaching, I was like, Steiner doesn't know everything. I'm going to do it a different way. You know, I was rebellious, and I had to prove to myself. And I would do it, and it would be a disaster. And then I would try his way, and all the children thrived. You know? So he said, what the way you teach is that you look at history. How did human beings learn to read? They couldn't have read before they had written something. Something had to be written before you could read it. And before it was written, there was drawing. There was drawing, then there were symbols for the drawing, then there were letters, and there were sounds. They made the M out of your mouth, and so they went like that, you know. And so it's an imaginative process. We don't know for sure exactly, but you can imagine. And so then they couldn't even read to themselves. They could only read aloud when they started reading. And Thomas Aquinas was one of the people who, they saw his eyes going back and forth and nothing was coming out of his mouth, and they thought he was magic. Now everybody does it, you know? So that was a step as well in reading. So when you have little children, you'll hear them going, pa, ta, you know, aloud. And then finally, one of the little boys in 2nd grade, he was at the library, had a big stack of books, you know, little picture books with little titles underneath. And I said, Misha, are you reading? He said, yeah, I couldn't read. And one day I just said, oh, duh. And he started reading, you know, because all the tools had been offered to him in the early grades. So if you want to know what's the best natural way to teach children is you study history and you look at how human beings originally learned. And then you're not experimenting. You're not, oh, let's try this math thing. You know, math comes, the first written language, the cuneiform writing from Sumeria was all about accounting in math. You know, that's what the tablets said. You owe me 6 bushels of wheat now. You know? So those things are, and that's why math goes very quickly in Waldorf. The 4 functions are already studied, and I was looking at Miss Leia's book in here, and they've got all these lovely pictures of counting of things, you know, and people who are losing their marbles out of the bag. Sorry. This is going to be a book one day, that's why it's clipped. So I wanted to give you an idea of how children develop. But are there any questions now? Would you just love to hear my voice?
Yes.
So here, I'm going to draw for you. And this is such a beautiful, I'm going to draw a timeline going like this. And I hate to do that, but it's so wet. You don't have dry ones, everyone has wet ones. That's okay. Leanna, is it okay to?
Yeah.
Because then it never comes off. So here's the child is born physically. Okay, and this is birth. And this is 7. I'm going to do the 14 bigger because this is the time we're talking about here. And then, well, let's make it a little bigger here. And so this would be 6, 7. This is where they lose their teeth. Yeah, and that's actually a sign of nature, and I'll tell you about that. And then this is 13, 14. And this is 21, and this is 28, because actually you are not a fully grown adult until you're 28. Who's 28 in here? So, and this is an amazing time here, and also can be. So anyway, I want to, so here you're born. There's a turning point at 3, the age of the school, and 5, and 9, and let's do this, 9, and 10, and 11, and then 12 is a turning point, 12, 9, 3, 5, this is a big transition here, and then there's 13, and then there's 15, and 18, and 21, and then it goes on. So turn to each other and ask each other if you remember anything when you were 9 years old. Go ahead.
Oh, really?
Okay. Anybody want to share something that their friend told them?
Birthdays, like birthday parties, I feel like are pretty, those are always like vivid memories. I feel like those big moments.
And do you remember all of yours, or was there something special about mine?
I said 10. Yeah, 9 was
9,
kind of-
10, 10
yeah.
was I wore shorty pajamas for the first time. But 9, and I'll get to that too, so just hold on to that for a minute. But so the physical body is born here, and the children are almost, you think about an animal born and a child born. An animal is walking in maybe a day, and then reproducing, the reproductive things are going in a year, maybe even at the most 3 years, they're adults. Whereas the child, they're even 18 and they still won't leave your house. But they take a long time, to develop because because of the inner spiritual quality that is also being born at that time. But at this time here, we call this the will time. This time is the children are doubling their weight, doubling their height, growing faster than ever again at this speed. And they don't need to have head work to interfere with that growth. That for their health, they need to play and experience things. And they don't need to play with puzzles that have A that are going into the A-hole. I've been in a classroom where everything was geared to reading and every toy was about abstraction. There was not a piece of bark or a sand or, some or a stick. There wasn't anything natural or clean of interest for the children. It was all in primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And so there's really nothing except to gear the children into this maze that they have to go into instead of, which is what art is about, discovery and surprise. And that is the seat of critical thinking. So here's the will. And then there's a time when nature says, I'm done with building up this body at such a speed, and the teeth fall out. And that is an indication that the physical speed has slowed down, and now there's another birth here. And this is the birth of the life body. So when the child is born, there's a physical body, a life body, an astral body, and a sense of self, all come in there in one package. But they haven't been released. The physical doubles its thing, and then it releases the life body. And when the life body, which we also call etheric body, it's another term for it, but it's the life body in the sense of well-being, will give you that in health. And plant, it's what we have in common with plants. When that is released, then we can start academic work. But it's through feeling. So this whole area here is through feeling. This area from here to here is the feeling area. And that's why we have so much art going on in here, because this is the way you develop the feelings in terms of we start violin at 9. We start playing violin. And why do we play violin and not guitar? Because there are no frets and you have to listen to where you put the finger, and it develops the musicality in you to find, it develops your ear. You listen, you have to listen to find the right note. And it might be that you'll never be a violinist, but you will have practice in listening, and maybe you'll learn Chinese very well because you know how many nuances they have, hundreds of years. So those are the kinds of things. And then maybe at 12, you're going to take up an instrument. You'll become a trombonist, whatever, doesn't matter, whatever your thing is. So this is the feeling. And then here is the onset of adolescence. And then the important thing is the thinking here. And it doesn't mean that there's no thinking here. And it doesn't mean that there's no thinking here, but this here is the birth of the thinking. And I think I'll put it here. And then over here at 21 is the birth of the sense of self. And in this time here, I'm going to put that in here because you're so young, you'll probably be interested. What happens is here is that if you're learning from 21 to 28, who you are, what you want, and what you believe in. And if you don't do it in this time here, it gets harder and you could get lost. But this is where you realize I'm a human being. I am responsible for the earth and for my fellow men and women. And it's not the small ego, me, mine. It's the I am a human being part of that's going on. So here you've got these little compartments are also in 3. So this here is the will of the willing part. And this is the feeling of the willing part, and this is the thinking of the willing part. And the will means that the children learn by imitation. So you better be like, watch what you're doing, because they are looking at every little thing you're doing, and they're saying what you say. And you watch your language.
Yes.
And so, and they need, and what they need is the ground is moving. You know, they're unstable, they're insecure, they're little children. They know that if they can't look after themselves, so they need consistency. You know, the bath at the same time, the dinner at the same time, the good night, the prayers, the lullaby, the story, whatever you do at bedtime, you should have a routine for them, and they can rely on it. And if you go to a party and you miss the routine, that was unusual, but today we're doing it again, you know? So this is the 3 things. And then we start again. So this is the feeling time. So this is the will of the feeling time. And this is the feeling of the feeling time. Best time for the heart forces. And the best learning and the best growth from 9 to 12 and 11 and 10 is amazing because they're just learning. There's no adolescence. They're not kids. The hormones haven't struck in, and they're interested in science. Proper begins here in the Waldorf school. I mean, there's science here with exploration of everything. And in 3rd grade, at 9 years old, you have how to live on earth, you know, farming, shelters, clothing, and, you know, it's amazing. It's an amazingly practical year. And they feel like, I built a house with one of my 3rd grades, and one of the little boys said, well, now that I know how to build a house. And the confidence, you know, it was that they had, you can't tell children, oh, you're wonderful all the time. They don't believe you. They look at their friend who can do it and they can't, and they don't feel good. But when they make something themselves, then they really can experience confidence. And that's why we do handwork. We do handwork all the way through to high school. They knit, they sew, in 5th grade, they draw a pattern. They draw an animal and make a pattern from it, and then they cut it, and it's got a gusset in it. and then they sew it, and then they stuff it, and then they put the ears on, and then they finally think, oh, it is an animal. And they make it moving, they make it like this, you know, they don't just make it standing, unless it's an elephant. But they choose these, so those are, I mean, they've done that from the beginning to the end. They know how to, you know, if the world goes into pieces, they will know how to make their own shoes. And Steiner says a philosopher should always know how to make his own shoes. So this is the thinking then of the feeling part here. So this is the thinking of the feeling, and this is where children, so let me go through this first. 3 years old is the first time the child says I and understands it, not imitating you. Around 2 or 3, they say me bally, me spoony and stuff, and then they say, I want that, you know. And sometimes it's just an imitation from what you're saying, but there's a moment when you can say, you can see that they really have come into an understanding of themselves. It's the first separation, and this school is 3 years old. It's this year that you are going to understand. It's a turning point, really, and it can be tumultuous because 3 years old are not terrible. The 2s are great. And the 3 years old are terrible. The 2s are not terrible. The 2s are just curious. But the 3s think they get insecure because they see that they're separate from you, and then they hang on you and they won't leave you alone, you know. And you go and play, and they go. So that happens at 3, and then at 5. Is another point where they get bored in kindergarten, and then their parents think, oh, they must be going ready for college. It's not true. They just need to be bored. They just need to figure out who they are, because boredom is a terrific thing it's the mother of invention, you know. And then at 6 and 7, when they lose their teeth, they go to school, and then they're really happy because they were bored here. And they're really ready to learn. And then the 9-year-old change comes. So this is the first I am, and this is the second I am, and this one is much more conscious. I had a mole growing on my eye that I recently, I took that off, but it's just traces of it there. But I had the children in 1st grade, the same children in 2nd grade and in 3rd grade. 11 children came and told me I had a mole on my eye. And the mole was there the whole 2 years. And that's because they suddenly looked, at 9 years old, your eyes cross. And that's why 3rd grade is such a great time to start reading chapter books, because you actually have focus. Before, their eyes are like this, and in kindergarten they're like this, and they're making them do this. It's harmful. So and the heartbeat slows down to almost an adult rate. And then this chair that used to be, you know, a dragon or a boat or a box is now just simply a chair. And there's a kind of feeling of loss of childhood. And there's a lot of crying and sadness. And sometimes parents think, oh, it's the school, we have to change schools. Don't change them, they're just going through. If you don't want a child to be idiotically happy all the time, you want them to figure out things, you know. And that's all. I know it's very hard to see your child suffer. I have children, and you just want to save them, you know. But really, you can sit with them and put your arm around them and just hum a little song, you know. Let them go through it. And so this is then we come to the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old, and this comes cause and effect. This is where they find out cause and effect. And then the puberty starts here. And this is where so how do we know what to teach them?
It's we know what to teach them because we follow this here. And so fairy tales are very far away. You know, history is far away. You're not talking to them about Hitler over here when they're 6 or 7. You're talking to them about fairy tales because fairy tales, all the characters are in one person. So you're taking humanity and you're showing all the facets of humanity to them. So it's very cosmic here. It's so cosmic that the numbers are taught in the qualities. Like 1 is the whole world, and 1 is a grain of sand, and 1 is you. You know, you're unique. So I had a little girl, and I said, tomorrow we will learn the number 1. And she went home and she goes, number 1. What is there to learn about number 1? 1 is 1. She was telling her mom. And the next day she ran to her mom, picked her up, and she said, Mom, we learned the number 1. So that's the quality that you are bringing here, because this sets the foundation of wanting to learn. And what do we do here in kindergarten for reading? We start with comprehension. And how do we do that? We tell stories, because when children love stories, they want to know what's in that book. If it's just a mechanical sound thing, they're not interested. They don't even know what they're reading. So here we have, and then the 9-year-old change. It's almost like a coming to earth, and then they have the Hebrew stories where they get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And that's very apropos for this time. And if you have any other stories that kick you out of the Garden of Eden in another culture, that's fine too. We're not stuck on it. It's just that it's so appropriate. You know, they have to go work. I mean, they've been dreaming this whole time here. This is asleep. Here they're asleep. Here they're dreaming. And here they awake. So this is a kind of slow awakening. And then this is the heart of childhood, where they do Norse mythology and Greek and Roman history, and they learn about democracy, because it's a debate, and the individual. And the Greeks, my parents are Greek. They are very strange people, let me tell you. They all spoke Greek, but they couldn't get along. They were so much about each other, they couldn't get along. And that happens a bit in class, where the girls and the boys form little cliques, you know. And then geography comes, science comes in, American geography. Well, he's from Texas, he's from Colorado, he's from Louisiana, for goodness sake. And oh yeah, but we're all Americans, so it brings it together, brings them all together. Oh, well, we don't mind them. I mean, they're not our best friends, but you know, we're all Americans. So that happens, and then here comes cause and effect. So you get the Roman Empire here. You have to watch out. If you're the teacher, they'll cut your head off. Like kill the empress. And then science begins in 4th grade. And then it starts off with zoology, goes to 5th grade with botany, goes to 12th to 6th grade with acoustics, optics, magnetism, and heat. And then it goes to physiology and chemistry and lots of things up here. I can't remember. It's a while since I've been in 8th grade, but it's a fantastic science. Physics in 7th grade. Chemistry is fabulous in 8th grade. You're like a magician, you know, you're pouring things. The fire alarm goes off a couple of times, and heat, you know, and so on. So that's why we teach the way we do. And when you do it like this, and this is what I was telling you, I was trying not to do as Steiner said, and when I did it, it's like a map. The children respond, they lift up and meet you, you know, and you can see it, and you go, wow, you know, that really rang a bell. So just a few more things here. Here in this sphere, you're sowing the seeds of self-discipline by having a routine. So this is self-discipline. You are telling the children while they're asleep that the world is good. I mean, the children who have a good appetite, they believe the world is good. They'll eat everything. Children who don't like to eat, it's a worry, you know, because they don't trust that the world is a good place yet. It's not that you have to tell them that the world is a bad place. If it is a bad place, in some ways it always is. I mean, look what's going on. But it's not their business yet. This is where they get to current affairs in 8th grade. And then you give them projects. I have, you know, dying to be thin. One girl did this thing, you know, and all these current affair things and different political things, and they do presentations on those things. So why do we come up? So here, history starts far away through fairy tales, legends, myths, and we touch on every continent. It's not only Eurocentered. And then by the time we get to 8th grade, it's current affairs. The geography, we start exactly where we're standing here. What's in the ground right there? Here, we start here with geography and body geography and geography. And then it gets wider, it goes to your state. Then it goes to your country, and then it goes to your neighbors, and it goes to the poles. And so you go around the world. You go, by the time you get to 8th grade, you've gone to Africa, China, and there's an age of exploration here with 7th grade. So you've got all these Chinese and Portuguese explorers who are going around the world in ships. And then you get to world geography, where in my 8th grade, I gave my class a product like sugar, and they had to follow it around the world and report on how it grew and how it traveled. Tobacco is one of them, coffee, all those things. So, taking you around the world. So this is self-discipline. This is that the world is beautiful. The world needs to be beautiful. That's why we do so much art here. And then this is that the world needs to be true. They're not the world needs to be true. They want truth. And they don't want, so here you have the parents are the governors. You're the governor. No, you're not crossing the road now. I said so. You stand here. Here, the parents are gardeners and the teacher. And here, the parents are guides.
You're the enemy.
What did I do?
No, I say when they get older, you're the enemy.
And they spar with you. Yeah. With sword fighting, and they argue, and it's really not that they are against you, they're just honing their skills. And I remember I said, look, when you get there, call me. They were teenagers, my children, and they said, you don't trust us. And I said, no, darling, I might be in an accident. I might be on my deathbed, and I just want to say goodbye to you, and we can't find you. And they always called after that. So anyway, here the teacher needs to be an all-round person that can do many things. Here the teacher needs to be like a mother and father, sweet and kind and helpful and laying down the gentle rule. And then here the teacher needs to show that they can play music, do poems, sing a song, play the recorder, write beautifully, and so on. And then here, the teacher needs to be a specialist in their field. They don't want somebody who's like frou-frou. They want someone who really knows what they're talking about so that they can find out what the truth is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've covered almost everything that I could. Oh, yes, and this here, moral and social living. Yeah, this is where you get your moral compass and your sociability with your friends and so on. That's very hard. Morality is not something you tell children about. As soon as you start telling them about it, it's not going to work. What it is you teach them math. Math is moral. So when there's so much depth in Waldorf education, I can't even explain to you why I said that, because it's so deep. There's no preaching and there's no giving your religion. There's no, it's forbidden to tell them about, any kind of religion that you have, because their parents are taking them to church, and that's fine. But all of this, even when we go to 12th grade and we do Roman history, and the life of Christ is in there, and the life of Muhammad is in there, those are told without a trace of sentimentality. It's a biography. And then I think I've covered, and this is to know the world. Their thing is to know the world. And these are, and there's seeds. These are seeds of discipline. This is seeds of moral living and social skills. And here are the seeds of intuition. So you have intuition, imagination, and inspiration. So it is interesting that inspiration is down here, and you would think it was up here, but the kindergarten, what the kindergarten teacher does actually is reflected in high school. So the seeds for inspiration begins in the kindergarten, almost falls asleep while they're doing all these artistic things, and then blooms here in the pursuit of truth. Any questions? I wanted to just say, ask you about that. When I was 9, it was the first time that I realized that I was thinking something and my parents didn't know what I was thinking. And that I would predict that if I said something, they would say that. They were very predictable, which is a gift to children if you're predictable. So I said, and I said it, and sure enough, that's exactly what they said. I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. But there was this guy who said he was sitting on the front steps, I think in Chicago, and his car went by, and his mother and father were in there, and his grandparents, and his brother, and the dog. And he ran after them, and he cried and cried, and he ran and just went tootling down the road. And he sat on the step and he cried and cried. And then he got tired of crying, and he went inside, and there was his mother and his father and his grandmother, and everybody was there. There was a 9-year-old thing where he thought he was being abandoned, So that's why I asked you about 9. It's a data point. Okay, so what are your questions about Waldorf? We have a few minutes.
Class size. Class size.
Class size. So in my school in Peonia,
What's Peonia?
Peonia is in Colorado on the western slope of the Rockies,
Oh, okay, all right.
near Utah.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just a couple states over. It's a direct flight with the Legion from there. They have 15 to 20 children in the class.
Okay.
And we are 7 years old, and we started with 20 children. And
Wow.
we are now 130. But we're a public school, and we're a free Waldorf school. People had moved there. One family came, when we were 15 children, a family came with 5 children. Our enrollment went up. One quarter. And
So
So
anyway,
15 to 20.
But in Germany, they have 30, 35, 40.
What are they here? What are the class
Here,
sizes?
oh,
Yes.
here, I think they're very small here, it's just beginning. 10 is the biggest.
No,
11.
for the early childhood,
Really.
for the,
Oh,
but
sorry.
in the grades, we have 5 and 6 right now in the class.
Mhm.
Although
We're not
we,
maxed.
we're not maxed at all.
No,
Ideally, we would like to see a class of like 12, you know.
15 is.
12 to 15.
Yes, that would be, you know, that would be where we would like to see a grades class maxed out at.
Okay.
You want to have lots of friends, you know, but if you have 5 children and you don't get along with someone, that's like a half of the class.
So, you know, I don't make friends easily.
And you probably keep them forever.
I do,
yeah. There's a whole other lecture on temperaments.
Oh, we're just hockey fans, that's why. We're also missing the game.
I know, we
If you have grandchildren, send them, you'll never regret
This
it.
is why I'm here.
Yeah.
My granddaughter just
Yeah.
turned 6, and she's in kindergarten at Faith. And
So
we'll just leave it at that.
yeah, bring them if you can and help sponsor them if you can, because
No,
it will pay off.
that's
They
a
go to
given.
college
Yeah,
and they choose their life is, they know what it makes them happy. And they become much happier people, unless the parents have, you know, given them too many traumas and then they have to.
this little girl never stops smiling. She smiles the minute she wakes up in the morning.
Show us a picture.
Now you asked for it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a question. One of the unique things about Waldorf we found was that there are no textbooks.
Right.
And you pointed to these books, which are very, it's very concrete for the first graders, but I was wondering when you get up into the, like the 9, 12 middle school, how does that work? How does the information get shared from the teacher to the student? What do the books look like? What does the training look like for a teacher?
Yeah. So the first research project that they do could be in 3rd or 4th grade. When they do zoology, they have to research an animal. And by that time, they're reading mostly chapter books. By the end of 3rd grade, they're reading. And one of the reasons that our district, one of the conditions that they would pay our teachers and give us a building and leave us to be a Waldorf school is if we pass the state tests by 3rd grade. And we thought, oh, well, they should be reading by 3rd grade, so we agreed. And they write, they start writing on their own from 1st grade. They can, you know, we call it telling a story, and spelling is not even the thing, you know, it's just writing. And then if they can read it back, sometimes if they didn't spell it very well, they can't read it back. So, and then, but in middle school, the books are incredible because they've been drawing the whole time and illustrating their books on every stage. They've been drawing animals and they've been drawing plants, you know, in botany, and they've been drawing maps. And I can't tell you how wide their knowledge is and how deep and how able they are with their hands. My son, he can fix anything. He's like a fix-it guy. And he says, thank you, Waldorf. And he did it, and he, you know, he played the violin, although he hated it, and he drew a picture of it, cut it out, put it on the tree, and shot it with his But they were doing the Suzuki method, and he's a musician now, but it was so boring for him to do this. He wanted, a substitute teacher came in and taught it
in a beautiful way. And he was like, that's the kind of music I want, you know? But I didn't understand, you know, so he got, and I said, all right, you can give up the violin. No, but the books are amazing. They have, you know, for instance, when they go into medieval history, it's like a monk, you know, they do their first letter with gold leaf and stuff, and then they write a composition about what the teacher has. The teaching is, you know, the teacher has the textbooks, and the teacher gives the lesson and asks them questions and asks them to get together and write an essay or write one by themselves. So when I'm the fifth grade instructor for the training college in Denver, we have a training there. And I tell them they need to copy something from the board that is beautiful, you know, that has been written beautifully. They have to create something together as a class, and then they have to write something, usually on Friday, so I can take it home and then correct it, and then they can put it in their books. But they make their own textbooks, and they're amazingly beautiful. Parents leave them on their coffee table, you know, especially if you have and the homework. I love to give homework with, you know, illustrators for homework. So they're drawing while they're listening to the family, and they make these elaborate drawings because it's not against the family, it's with the family, you know. And yeah.
When does homework come into play in Waldorf education?
Pardon?
When does homework come into play? When do they start receiving
In
homework?
third grade, they were like, when are you gonna give us homework? I said, who wants homework? You know, so then, and the homework would be, because they study measurement in third grade, because they have to measure things for the house to build. And the homework was to measure your dining room table, so they get to measure it. I gave them little, what do you call those?
Tape
measures? What?
Tape measure?
Yeah, but it's not a
A
tape.
yard
Oh, the one
stick.
like for when you're like
For
fabric, for,
building,
yeah.
A yardstick.
Yeah, no, but I gave them one that rolls back, you know.
Oh, yeah, the tape measure, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tape measure, but there's
There's the fabric one that rolls
yeah,
Mhm.
no, but this is for building, and it was just a little one, and they
okay.
went around measuring their shoes. and- Yeah. But, yeah, and what was your question?
Like,
Homework starts in third grade.
Oh, yes,
typically.
homework in the third grade. Yeah, you know, sometimes I'll give them a riddle in first and second grade and ask them if they can figure it out tomorrow, you know, that would be your homework. But I don't, it's not a pressure. Homework is, when I was a kid, homework was the devil. Honestly, I never did it. I failed twice in elementary school. My mother couldn't believe it. Yeah.
I'd say that gestation period that you were talking about is kind of the homework. Like,
Yeah.
they're just doing it subconsciously.
Yeah.
So when you had them do the project on the sugar, how did they find that information if there's no computers? Because my first thing would be Google.
Well, they have computers, all of them even have them at home now. It's almost like, you know, it's just at a higher standard at school. But keep them away from, especially before they're 9, my goodness, and from video games. It's really damaging for them. And it's, and what the 9-year-old change, they feel separated. And they will get lost in a video game because they need a distraction from feeling separated. But what the distraction needs to be is a book. You know, so that's why they get into reading, because they don't have any video games and the books are there. They want to just, you know, they start reading like this for themselves, you know. And you have readathons in the class, and you put pillows everywhere, and they come in their pajamas, and they get people to sponsor them, and they read all day. We stop for lunch, you know. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a great thing, just the reading. It's like a reading culture suddenly happens, you know. They recommend books, and there's book reports. It's just, you know, it's a lot. I mean, you know, it's the same content as any other school. It's just the way that you bring it. It's just the life
and it's childlike, and there's songs and there's poems, they recite, and there's a play every year, there's a dramatic presentation. They just did an Egyptian play, it was amazing, they had full length, Osiris's and Isis's and it was like, Osiris is dead, So, yeah, and they learn so much about plays from, teamwork and telling the story as a whole group. If somebody doesn't do it, it damages the whole play, It doesn't learn their lines, or there's a light, people are on the lights, they're doing the backdrops, they're doing costumes where they can. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but they also, children today are very democratically raised, and it's tough for teachers. I'm so glad I don't teach regularly full-time anymore, because parents are always asking children what they like, and they think that all the judgments are dependent on what I like, because it's, do you want this, or do you like this, or would you like this, or do you want this, or they just want the children to be happy. I heard of a woman, the child was putting a hat on, and she said, "Do you like that hat?" And I was, I'm like a grandmother saying, "Is the hat comfortable?" Because that's the basis of a judgment of getting a hat. It's not whether, you might like it, but it has to be comfortable for you to like it, So you teach them how to make a judgment, not based on what they like and what they want, but it's an American thing. It's not infused in every culture, in the culture here. He doesn't like it. And the children, and the mom will say, "Oh, he loved that." I'm like, "Oh, well, lucky you."
There should be a guide for the parents, right? Like how to support the children, in this, because you're in your routine or your habits, and like this makes so much sense to me, but how to break out of that habit of some of the things at home that are going on. And I know there's pushback because, I've experienced with lots of things where he wants a certain snack and you have to suffer for 10 minutes of him screaming and crying. No, you're not having that right now. And it's painful. And I see why people give in, like, just have it. But how to support.
My children used to say, "I hate you," and I said, "Oh, because I like you so much."
But to speak to that, I do think that something that about the Waldorf culture is that there is self-study and self-improvement that's infused within the community.
Yeah,
So
I'm already hearing
while
all
the
this
kids
going,
are
oh
learning-
gosh, I have a lot of.
While the kids are learning, the
Yeah.
parents can do study too, and can meet and do groups, and we talk about books and read and learn together on how we can support them at home and carry this back and make sure that we're aligned with all of the things that we're doing. And that is one of the shining stars of Waldorf, is that that's encouraged.
Really, yeah.
And I'm just gonna take this opportunity to piggyback on Molly and say we have our first snack and chat next Wednesday, second and fourth Wednesday of every month. So if we want to add a Waldorf study to that, we can maybe work that out and like.
What
talk
does
about it.
that mean? What do you do?
So after the parents, this will be our first one, so what we do, this is what we hope for. So the after school, the parents will monitor their own children because the teachers will be off work. And just bring a snack to share and talk and get to know each other and build community. So I think it would be a great time to talk about.
Yeah, it's a good starting point for us to start that process of parent study, and of being together as parents in the community and how we can take some of the stuff home and.
It may have been too late for the cigarette factory, but not for us.
Never too late for us. We're still 28 though. That's why.
So in our school, we have a group of elders. And we meet and study ourselves, and we hold the school. And when we see a problem, we go and we have a principal because it's a public school, and we meet with the principal, and then we meet with the teachers, and we say this, you know, the rudeness in here cannot fly, you know, or whatever it is. And then, and we have a lot of gravitas because of together, we form a whole, you know, one person is a parent, one person's a biodynamic gardener, and one person is a musician, but they all are Waldorf, they have Waldorf knowledge. And it's an amazing thing for the elders to do. If you have grandchildren here, form the elders group as well. It holds the school up.
Yeah.
And then study together, because it's a wonderful thing to read a book. Marley brought this book called Understanding Waldorf.
Oh, yeah.
What is it?
Understanding Waldorf education.
Yes, and it's black and it's got a big green apple on it.
Yep.
And I would suggest that every new parent gets a copy. Because it gives you a real picture. You don't have to be a Steiner person, you know, because there is a whole background behind it that we are not, that have nothing to do with the children, that just carries our understanding. And you don't have to be one of those people to have your child here. And we have a teacher in our school who went all the way through Waldorf, and she's a teacher now. And she said, well, she went away to Africa and did a whole lot of other things. But she said, well, I remember doing them, but I don't know why. And I went, that's good. That your teacher was good. She didn't indoctrinate you, you know?
Right.
We have to go, sorry.
Thank you so much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.